What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso. Second Thursday in a row, a little late night mailbag catch-up pod while we wait for the Jets to hire somebody. Although the hires started moving, we talked about it last night before our draft season episode with Steve Wilkes joining the staff, with Chris Banjo joining the staff. It seems very likely that our guy Tanner will be the offensive coordinator in short order. Probably goes official tomorrow. If and when it goes official, we'll react to it. Connor and I are recording the final 2 episodes of Streets of Fire tomorrow that we'll start releasing on February 10th. My guess is in between those 2 recordings, we'll riff a little bit, likely on that hire and some of the other happenings from Senior Bowl week, as him and Will are headed back after a week on the road. I am no longer recording in random hotel rooms, back in the studio. Just wanted to riff a little bit and answer some questions. It's been a steady drip of pods and don't want to stop the momentum. With a friendly reminder at the top, live show tickets. We are about 40 away from 200, which is crazy as we start coordinating with the venue and the best way to execute this. Glad we have 2 months. A good first world problem, but come on out. Everyone's going to be there, literally. Get the Discord name tags going. Get your Jets Twitter name tags going. BadlandsTOJ.com. I'll link it in the bio. Get your ticket now. Open bar, food, giveaways, all types of different segments and fun and live Q&A. So April 11th, New York City. Come on out. All right, let's start going through some of these Discord questions. Thank you, everyone, for sending them in, as always. First one from Wester. Do you think that in today's NFL, it is harder to get a QB solution without drafting one in the first round? I feel like the 2010s, there were several starting quarterbacks that were drafted in later rounds who were multiple year starters for teams. While today, if you look at the AFC, 11 of the 16 teams, first round draft picks are their starting quarterbacks. If you factor in Tennessee and Cleveland potentially drafting one this year, in the NFC, the number is not as high, skewed by the Goff Stafford trade, but is becoming less and less common. Can you explore this topic in more detail? Long-winded way of effectively saying, like, is there any way to fix quarterback without drafting one in the first round? My answer is yes. I mean, these things like come and go in waves in the NFL, right? But at its core, your best odds for sustained success in the league is nailing a first-round pick at quarterback. Although I was just kind of flipping through who's made the Super Bowl the last like 10, 12 years. And the consistency of it always being a team quarterbacked by either Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, or to a lesser extent, Peyton Manning is just astounding. That Rams-Bengals game just sticks out like the most like weird random one out there. But every year, man, effectively since Mark Sanchez came this close to making the Super Bowl. And of course, he was a first round pick. That is what it takes to get to the Super Bowl, having Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady. Yes, you have some of these fluky things that come in where you get a Nick Foles season or Flacco, but Flacco was also a first-round pick. So it's a fair point, and it kind of dovetails into, I was riffing on Twitter today who the Jets should take at 7, and so many people said Jackson Dart, which I was like, really, at 7? Again, I'm not a draft guy. Like I obviously am aware of what's going on, and I'm blessed to work with very smart guys like Connor and Dan and Will are all way closer to it. Meeks, Dalbin. I was like, hey, there's no way this guy goes at 7. And I'm looking at the Twitter discourse, and it's like, yeah, like why not? Like, look how Penix climbed the board. Look at how Bo Nix climbed the board, and just to kind of like talking with them out there, like no way. But we're going to talk about that more in the feed. But it's the argument is that do you just reach and hope you're right? And if you're right, the payoff is worth it. We know if you're wrong as a Jet fan, how painful that could be. I don't think they're going to take Dart at 7, by the way. I think they'll take an offensive or defensive lineman. The league's going to go in different cycles. I'm not fully writing off if and when Mahomes is not in a Super Bowl, and that could happen because they get banged up one year or whatever. Fluky things happen sometimes, that there might not be another way to get there. But it's hard in the AFC right now, right? You got to compete with Josh Allen. You got to compete with Lamar Jackson. You got to compete with Mahomes, to a lesser extent. You got guys like Herbert, maybe Lawrence starts getting better. Now you also, there's just a lot of quarterback talent. And for the Jets, it doesn't mean that you just throw spaghetti or shit at the wall if you don't think a guy is worth the 7th overall pick. I'm not really sure there's going to be a quarterback there unless Cam Ward happens to fall, which he won't, that they would take in round 1. So I understand sort of feeling like you're a little bit in purgatory. I've just seen not that long ago and not that long in the longer scale. And I know that Sanchez was a first round quarterback. I've just seen the Jets get to the cusp of a Super Bowl twice in a different style. And the league's different now, but my belief has always been just get into the tournament and crazy things could happen. You know, you get hot in the right way at the right time for a few weeks, and that could happen with any quarterback. You get a couple breaks. It can be done. And we've seen, it hasn't been as recent, but we've seen the Giants do this twice and win a Super Bowl. We saw Flacco do this and win a Super Bowl. Even though those guys were first rounders, they're not first rounders in the way that we're seeing Allen, Jackson, and Mahomes and Burrow play on their runs where they were truly dominant all season and MVP candidates, and then, you know, just rolled right through. They were just quarterbacks who were kind of like pretty average and then got really hot for a few weeks, and look what happens. So look, this could be one of those years where, a couple people sneak into the first round where they shouldn't. Next year is supposed to be a much better quarterback class. It's a little too early to tell. But you keep throwing shit against the wall, and maybe you get a Dak on a day 2 or a day 3. Maybe you get a Brock Purdy in a round 7. And Purdy, if he doesn't hurt his elbow in that Eagles game, he's already been to 2 Super Bowls in his career, right? Late round pick. So the conferences will flip and they'll move around, and it's not as hopeless, I think, as it seems. Although when you watch staring down the barrel of Mahomes about to have a three-peat, I get some of the just keep taking first rounders, and let's talk about it as we get to the offseason and see how the Jets approach quarterback. I will say I don't say the Jets taking Dart at 7. I'm still amazed that seemingly has become such a thing, like basically overnight because of some Senior Bowl practices. But the draft cycle is something. Next one from Yanks MTN. When and how will we start seeing the hanger-ons in the front offices start to get the guillotine? Eloquently put. This stuff kind of moves slower than the coaching staff because it's such a big infrastructure in the front office, and Senior Bowl's here, and you got to get ready for the draft, and you need scouts on the ground, ready to go. My guess is after the draft, you'll hear of a couple of people leaving. And in the interim, you'll hear of a couple of people being hired. And then in year 2, hopefully you're seeing a more expansive clean out. Some will be more public than others. These usually lag a little bit, but I'm keeping an eye on around the NFL draft where, you could see Amuji maybe getting 1 or 2 people in he trusts to bounce ideas off of who are going to be long-term hires here, and still keeping some of the previous infrastructure just to keep the trains moving on time, just because you're on a tight timeline. And then kind of post NFL draft, starting to really churn up some major changes. My main hope for him, and I've said this a lot, is get a new number 2 and get a new number 3. Nail that Rex Hogan and Chad Alexander role. Be better than Joe Douglas was. I don't love the thought of Phil Savage sticking around, but if he's going to stick around, let him be your number 4 or number 5. Just don't keep him as your number 2 and be he's your top lieutenant. You got to go get your own voices, and you got to bring some fresh blood in. So that is my one request of Muji at 39 years old. Go get some new young voices in. I got a long question from some 0191 about their quarterback option, the Jets quarterback options next year. I answered a similar question to this. I typed it out in the Discord, but I'll talk it through a little more here in terms of what are the other options? And we've talked about this a decent amount. I think from a betting odds perspective, if you told me Rodgers won't be the quarterback next year, the highest odds would be Tyrod Taylor. He's on the roster. He's capable of being a starter. If you could promise me Tyrod would start at least 12 games, I'd be just roll with him if you're not going to have Rodgers. He's pretty good and will be fine as a bridge quarterback. Can you get even 12 games from him? I don't know. He's had an issue staying healthy. Some of the other names that I could see them poking around on, Justin Fields is absolutely a possibility. And these are names that you put with Tyrod. You keep Tyrod and you get as many games from him as you can, but you need someone else who could compete and maybe start 4 or 5 games for you. Fields, I'm sure they'll look at. I wouldn't be shocked. Maybe they look at a guy like Jarrett Stidham. If they're looking back at the Denver roster, could he start a few games? Maybe. Do they try to trade for Herndon Hooker going back to Detroit? I don't know. Why would the Lions cut bait on him already? I think they'd like to have someone waiting in the wings, potentially for when after Goff. Teddy Bridgewater's back playing football, taking playoff snaps now. Do they poke around on him? I'm not crazy about Mariota. I know he's been mentioned a decent amount. Not my favorite option. Same with Minshew. Same with Wentz. The names get kind of scary quickly. Tyrod and Fields, Tyrod and Stidham, those kind of seem like things I could see happening with a mid-round draft pick. And is that Dart in the mid-round? Is that McCord in the mid-rounds? Maybe. I'm not sold Jordan Travis is ever really going to be a thing here. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. That'd be nice. That'd be a nice, pleasant surprise. But that's roughly how I see quarterback sitting right now. Next one from Johnny C. Are there any pending Lions free agents that stick out as potential fits, assuming they might be inclined to follow AG? Yeah, there's a few. The one you're going to hear the most and mock to the Jets the most is going to be Carlton Davis. I don't know why the Lions would be in a rush to let him go, but he's a corner. Aaron Glenn was a corner. Aaron Glenn was his defensive coordinator. The Jets will need a starting corner because DJ Reed won't be back and Carlton Davis is good. I just don't know if the Jets are going to go spend on him, but you'll hear that name rumored to the Jets a lot. Beyond that, Derek Barnes, one of their linebackers, a free agent. If they lose Sherwood, do the Jets poke around on him? Tim Patrick, I feel like we always talk about Tim Patrick potentially coming to the Jets, but he had a real nice year for the Lions last year, and the Jets need receivers. So keep an eye on old Timmy Patrick. One of these years it's going to happen. Marcus Davenport's an edge, be more of like a rotational player. Could be one to keep an eye on. You kind of comb through the rest of the roster. Khalil Dorsey, a depth corner. John Kaminsky, a rotational defensive lineman. You're more towards the bottom of the list now, but Carlton Davis, Tim Patrick in particular are interesting names to me if you're looking back at the Lions and who's available. JWeb136 talked me out of taking Genty at 7 and doing a supersized Lions running back stable. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say go get a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman or maybe McMillan or maybe Warren. Like Genty is exciting, but running back is the least of the Jets' problems. Brees is really damn good. Braylon Allen used right can be really damn good. Isaiah Davis is a nice change of pace back. Like the Jets are good at running back. They got some work to do at pass catcher in a big way. They got some work to do at safety. They got to figure out quarterback. I'm just not using a first rounder on a running back. I'd be shocked if that happened. To be fair, crazier things could have happened, right? The Jets wanted to take Gibbs. They almost took Gibbs. It would have been kind of interesting to see how that played out. Gibbs is awesome. So I'm not saying it's like a terrible idea. I don't see it happening. I'd be really surprised. And my guess is they're going to watch the tape of Brees and Braylon and Isaiah Davis and be like, these guys are really good. Let's just be smarter with how we use them. And we could run the hell out of the ball with all three of these dudes, especially if you got a Tyrod Fields type quarterback duo, because you got them going in the run game. That's a tough thing to deal with potentially. So a lot of Discord questions. Appreciate them as always. Expect to be on at some point tomorrow or Saturday. I will be on tomorrow recording Streets of Fire, but reacting to the Jets hiring their offensive coordinator, potentially hiring a guy like Todd Haley to join him, and hiring some staff around our guy Tanner, who it seems very much on track to be the Jets' next offensive coordinator. I am calling him Tanner for short right now. I will more properly call him Tanner Engstrand. I just don't like saying Engstrand. I had to get used to it. I'm just going to keep saying Tanner. And we're going to spend a lot more time digging into his resume and why to be excited and why to be skeptical about the potential move in the coming days. We'll also have a Buck the Trend and TOJ talks and feedback from Connor and Will on everything they saw at Senior Bowl. Sunday Coffee hitting Sunday, badlandstoj.com. Live show tickets, Printers Alley, New York City, April 11th. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for the questions. We will talk to you soon.